All right, ladies and gentlemen, today was the day Rkelly was sentenced in his Eastern District of New York federal RICO case, and I'm going to tell you everything that happened. So when we first got started, everything went in the order as I stated. The judge came out and immediately went into the PSR objections. So she didn't take any more evidence or argument regarding the PSR objections because both parties had already briefed on their objections. So what she did was she went count by count and offense by offense under the RICO to determine what his offense level was. And she came up with an offense level of 46 and a criminal history category of 1. But because of grouping, once you got to over, I think, a level 40 or something like that, you had to take it down to a 43. So his base offense level was 43. With the criminal history category of 1, the sentencing range was life. So in other cases, let's just say a drug case, gun case, whatever it is, let's say the range is 36 to 48 months or 120 to 132 months. There was nothing to nothing. It was just life. So from there, we took a break, and then the government had 7 women give victim impact statements. But let me go back. In one of the counts of the RICO, the victim was named Sonia, and the jury determined that they did not believe Sonia's allegations. Like they said, they weren't proven. That was what they said. All right. So 7 women gave their victim impact statements, and they were pretty good. So the first person was named Angela. I believe her real name is something else. It begins with a J, but she was the one. She testified at trial. She was also in the Lifetime documentary. She was in a group with Aaliyah and another young lady as a teen. He had sex with her, and she's also the one that testified that he had. She walked in on him giving Aaliyah oral sex. The next person was Jane Doe, but her real name was Edny. Her allegation was from 1994. These are like really old allegations. So a lot of people are just like outraged because the allegations are really old, but it just is what it is. She did talk about, her and her family experiencing social media bullying from this incident. And she said that she ended up meeting Rkelly because she went to a concert when she was a teenager, and she wanted to see Aaliyah, but Aaliyah didn't perform that night. But that's how she ended up meeting Rkelly. The next person was Jane Doe number 9. She was there with her lawyer, Gloria Allred, and Jane Doe number 9 was Lisette Martinez. She talked about him giving her a STD, and that she previously been sexually assaulted twice before Rkelly had sexually assaulted her. So basically, like, a lot of that trauma had carried over because, like, she never got, like, help or anything like that. Jane Doe number 2, her allegations were from 1999. She also testified that he had given her a STD and they had 8 months together. One thing that was really, really outrageous was that these 2 women, Jane Doe number 9 and Jane Doe number 2, both testified about Rkelly like making them have sex with him in front of other people. Jane Doe number 2 talked about her being a teenager and them being in the car and with his friends and him making her give him oral sex. And her basically saying like every day he just tried to humiliate her more and more. So that was like quite disturbing. The next person was Kitty Jones. She was a radio personality. She was an adult when she dealt with him, but she was a radio personality that went to be with him, and she was with him from 2011 to 2013. The next person was Faith. So her dad was initially going to speak on her behalf, but she actually spoke herself. And she talked about what happened. She said she didn't blame him. She was not, she made choices that she had to forgive herself for, and she let the court know. She was like, her dad was molested and he didn't do anything and harm other people, so she didn't feel like it was okay for Rkelly to do the same. Her dad spoke as well, and he was like, I want you to look at me man to man, father to father. And he was like, I don't want you to get a life sentence. I want the court to have mercy for you, but you have to first admit that you did something wrong. And let me say, during this entire time, all 7 of these people were talking, well, 8, including her dad, he did not look at any of them. he did not. All right, and so last but not least, it was Sonia, and I was wondering why they allowed her to speak, because the jury stated that they did not believe that her allegations were proven. So that was pretty interesting. So from there, we broke for lunch. After lunch, then it was Rkelly's team's time to do their presentation. So Rkelly's, the judge did not, no one spoke on Rkelly's behalf, and I don't know if she did not give that option or not, but she didn't even mention that in court. So his lawyer, you know, came out pretty tough. She spoke well, and she, you know, talked about, they do understand, and he does understand, that this is a serious offense, and just because he's not accepting the government story, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have any type of regrets or resentment. But she did kind of go into like arguments about why certain things are wrong. She didn't go that far into it, but it was just like, save that for your appeal. And she did say that she did say, we are going to appeal. But again, this was sentencing. This was not the time to like to bring up your arguments as to why certain things are going to be appealed. She did try to minimize quite a bit. She was referring to certain statements that some of the young ladies had made and saying, well, these weren't violent acts, certain things weren't egregious, these, so on and so forth. So that was pretty much it. After she made her statements, then the government made theirs. And before we even got to that point, there was an issue about his ability to pay a fine, because the government said, hey, he has the ability to pay a fine, and Rkelly's position was like, no. Well, his attorney's position was he may have some ability to pay a fine, but not much. Rkelly's lawyer said that he's pretty much indigent, and the judge was like, I'm pretty sure him being indigent is a stretch. So one thing they talked about was his masters, and so they were saying that Sony is holding his masters for a lot of the default judgments that he has in Chicago and getting those settled as they get through the court process. But they talked about he has some type of contract where he was selling other rights that he had, but the contract was for $5 million, and the money was being paid to a friend. So it kind of was, they were kind of insinuating that he was kind of trying to do a workaround by having the money go to his friend rather than directly payment to him. So there was some back and forth about that. So the government's position was, well, Sony already has, I think, $3 to $4 million that they're going to use to pay these outstanding lawsuits. And he has this contract for $5 million. So he's able to pay a fine in the future. And then they talked about, his royalty payments, how much he's been getting, so on and so forth. But they didn't finish that right then. They were going to go back to that. So that was that part. Other objections that they had in the PSR were things that, were not affecting the guidelines. Like one thing was like an arrest from 1996. There was no disposition of it, so it was removed. There were other small things that were removed from the PSR. They had no bearing on his sentence though. So that's just what it was. So after all of that, let's see. The judge gets to Rkelly and asked, hey, does he want to make a statement? His lawyer said, no, he does not want to make a statement. He has other pending cases. And she quickly asked him, his lawyer did, hey, is it your position that you don't want to make a statement? And he said, yes, that's my position. That's all that he said. He came out in court today. He had on a greenish scrub outfit, which is the prison uniform, with a long white tee up under it. It looked like he did gain weight. For those who want to know, with victim impact statements, when the young ladies are able to talk, there's no cross-examination or anything like that. They're just able to say their statements because at that point the trial is over. So they're able to just talk freely about how these things affected them. No one spoke on his behalf. And from there, the judge spoke. She did not unleash on him. Well, she did, but she didn't like raise her voice or like be excited or anything. Her tone was very calm, very patient. She said that he had a system in place with his enablers to like go to the mall or go to McDonald's to get these young girls for him. And it was a system, and he was just not defenseless in this. One thing that one of the victims said, which was really powerful, she said, there was no price was too high for someone else to pay for your happiness. And the judge re-said that when she was speaking, when she was getting ready to hand down her sentence. One thing she also said was the sentence that she was giving, this is before she even gave it, the sentence that she was giving was one that she was already going to give regardless of the guideline range. So at that point, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is going to happen? So we were definitely on the edges of our seats. She said that sentencing another human being is one of the hardest things that she has to do as a judge, but that's, you know, what she has to do. So she ends up, then she also talks about, you know, the reasons why she was giving her sentence. And she has to give, one thing is, you know, public safety, deterrence for others from doing things like this, but also to deter him from doing things like this in the future. And she said, you obviously were not deterred from doing this. She said, from you getting off on the 2008 case, you didn't learn anything from that. Like, you didn't learn to stop doing this. You just learned how to do it better and make the women sign NDAs. And it was like her statements were really powerful, but she was very calm. Like, she was not like, you know, going off, or she did not appear angry, anything like that. Also, one thing she talked about was, you know, no, he did not, you know, do certain things. Like, he did not pay the people directly for the marriage license to Aaliyah. You know, no, he did not do so many things, but his team did, and he was around them when they were doing these things. And she said, yes, all these people enabled you and they did wrong things, but these people aren't before me today for sentencing. But she did recognize that. And when she talked about Aaliyah and what the allegations or what was done, she referred to Aaliyah as a child. She's like, she was a child. And she referred to a lot of the other young ladies as a child when these things happened. She said that Rkelly, I guess it came out in trial, he calls himself a genius. And he believed that he could do whatever he wanted to do because of the gift that he was giving to the world. And she took all of that into consideration when she gave her sentence. Because there were so many different counts, she gave the sentence for each count. And before I get to that, each count runs concurrently, which means they all run together. So the one that really matters is the longest one. And so for count 1, she gave 360 months, which is 30 years. And that's the longest one that she gave. For count 2, she gave 10 years. Count 3, 20 years. Count 4, 20 years. Count 5, 20 years. Count 6, 10 years. Count 7, 20 years. Count 8, 10 years. Count 9, 20 years. With 5 years of supervised release, which is like a probation, once he's released from federal prison, a fine of $100,000. And again, he has to pay restitution, but they're going to have a hearing about restitution in September. One thing that the judge said, which I said as well, which was about the mitigation report that was submitted to the court. She said, you did not have to speak with these people. You did not have to, but you chose to. And what you did was, in speaking to them, was try to make excuses for your behavior. And if you remember my video from yesterday, I said that the mitigation report was probably going to come back to bite him in his ass. And it definitely did, because they did not have to use it. And he did not have to talk to them. And there were so many ways to get what they wanted out of that report without with the possibility of telling the doctor, hey, don't ask questions about certain things because these cases, other cases are still pending and we're going to have an appeal. His lawyer made it clear that they're already going to appeal, which I completely knew from the beginning. But today's sentencing, it was definitely kind of like on the edge of your seat type of situation, especially once the judge started talking and her giving her comments about why she was giving her sentence, especially when I heard her say the sentence she was giving, she was considering that before she even dealt with the guidelines. And that's it.